Hi.
Greetings, everybody. We're on page 136 of Crisis of Conscience. No, sorry, 126. Crisis of Conscience. He's been dealing for a few pages now with the boiling situation in Malawi. And the Mexican brothers are inquiring, and the governing body is seemingly divided right down the middle on what to do as to whether they should change their policy or not. And it's really starting to boil violently now because the Malawi persecution is getting worse in the mid-1970s. So Ray says, the witnesses in Malawi risked life and limb, homes and lands to adhere to the stance adopted by the organization for their country. In Mexico, there was no such risk involved, yet a policy of the utmost leniency was applied. There, witness men could be members of the first reserves of the army and yet be circuit or district overseers, members of the Bethel family. The report from the branch committee makes this clear. That's the Mexico branch committee, as well as showing how common the practice of bribing to get the certificate was among the witnesses. It goes on to say, quote, very small print, so I'll try to read this. As indicated in the above-mentioned letter from Brooklyn, the brothers have to use their own conscience on this matter. Something that nevertheless would be good to clarify is that it has become so common in the organization in Mexico to obtain the cartilla in this way, that is by paying. The inconveniences caused by not obtaining the cartilla are that one cannot leave the country, which the brothers of this country frequently do, going to the United States to assemblies, or having a little difficulty obtaining work when this document is required. Aside from that, young men would have no strong reason to try to obtain the document. But it is so easy to obtain it, and consulting with other young men who have obtained it, they tell them how it can be done, and these young men do not even think if it is all right for them in itself, individually, to obtain this document in the above-mentioned way. End of quote. So Ray says literally thousands of witnesses in Mexico know the truth of the situation as described. All the members of the Mexico branch committee know it, and all the members of the governing body of Jehovah's Witnesses know what the stated position of the world headquarters was on the matter. Yet outside of Mexico, very few people have any idea of what was said. Probably no one among the witnesses in Malawi does.
Oh, yeah. I cannot imagine a more obvious double standard, nor can I conceive of more twisted reasoning than that which allows for the position taken in Mexico, and at the same time argues so strenuously and so dogmatically that to accept alternative service is condemnable because it is viewed by the government as fulfillment of military service, is a tactic of implied acknowledgement of Caesar's war machine. The same men who made those statements in the governing body sessions had insisted that we want no gray areas and that the brothers need to have their consciences educated. Said this knowing that the common practice among Jehovah's Witnesses in Mexico for over 20 years had been to pay a bribe for a certificate saying that they had fulfilled their military service, a practice that the headquarters had officially stated was up to their conscience. Despite this, some members, and happily in several of the sessions it was only a minority, argued for the traditional position labeling a man as disassociated if he answers a judge's question about working in a hospital or giving the simple and truthful response that his conscience would allow this. They favored that policy while knowing that in Mexico men who were elders, circuit overseers, district overseers, and branch office staff personnel bribed officials to get their completed military service certificate, stating that they were now in the first reserves of the military, the war machine.
One governing body member, arguing for the traditional stand, had quoted a member of the Denmark Branch Committee, Richard Abrahamson, as having said regarding alternative service, quote, "I shudder to think of putting these young men on their own choice," unquote. Yet the official counsel sent by the headquarters organization to the Mexico branch was that the young brothers paying a bribe for a falsified document, placing them in the first reserves, was, quote, "for them to worry about if they're worried. It's not for the society's office to be worried about," end of quote. Later, the letter states that, quote, "there is no reason to decide another man's conscience," end of quote. Why was not the same position taken towards those in Malawi? I seriously doubt that the majority of witnesses there would have arrived at the same conclusions as the branch office personnel did. It is equally doubtful that there was a single native of Malawi, then Nyasaland, among those making such policy decision. Is there no responsibility resting upon those in authority within the organization for what amounts to a grotesque disparity of direction given?
Notably, as regards the failure of the Malawian authorities to uphold the high principles of their constitution, the Watchtower Society stated that the ultimate responsibility must be placed on President Banda, saying, quote, "if he knows and allows it, the mistreatment of the witnesses to continue, then surely he, as the leader of the country and the Malawi Congress Party, must bear the responsibility for what is happening in his country and in the name of the party. Likewise, members of parliament and party members who have either incited the young people to violence or turned a blind eye to what is happening cannot be exempted from responsibility. Can civil servants, police officers, the legal profession, and other responsible officials who, because of concern for their security or position, condone by silence what is happening in Malawi, absolve themselves from responsibility?" We'll shift the blame to them.
The same standard by which the organization judged the actions of the Malawian authorities should certainly apply to the organization also. If the governing body, not only knowing what had been said about the Malawian authorities and their responsibility, but also knowing of the organization's stand taken in Mexico, really believed that the position promulgated among the Brotherhood in Malawi was the right one, then they should certainly have felt impelled to reject the position taken in Mexico. To uphold a rigid position taken in Malawi, they should have been positively convinced of the rightness of that stand, with no doubts about it being the only stand for a true Christian to take, one soundly and solidly based on God's Word. To countenance in any way the position taken in Mexico would be to deny that they held such a conviction. If, on the other hand, they believed the position taken in Mexico, allowing men to exercise their personal conscience as to obtaining the military certificate, even by illegal means, was right or at least acceptable, then they certainly should have accorded to the Brotherhood in Malawi the same right to exercise their conscience in a matter that involved no bribing, no illegality, no falsification. Any fence straddling and turning of a blind eye to the facts, condoning by silence a double standard, perhaps out of concern for their security of position, would mean following the same course they condemned on the part of Malawian officials from top to bottom.
Yeah.
And he's made that point before, that sometimes the governing body seems to be more concerned with its own status and reputation in the eyes of the global brotherhood than they are with these situations that affect people so awfully.
So those people who are being abused and tortured and raped are not going to get any comfort from this kind of attitude. Well, let's blame the government. When you've taken two positions and you've just allowed brothers to go through terrible persecutions.
So if we had known this, and we were both pioneers back in those years, 77 through 79.
I remember writing letters
writing letters to the
Yeah.
Malawian government about this. If we had known this confusion at the highest level in our own governing body, what would we have been?
It certainly would have bothered me.
Yeah. I think the link is a Franz Freedom commentary on JW's bogus unity. And of course, that's the big call here, isn't it? We must appear to be united on this, even if at the highest level we're divided.
Yeah, but see, the brothers don't know it, either in Malawi, in Mexico, or the rest of us.
Yeah.
Unaware. Yeah.
See you next time.